The marks of the toppers in these papers or general studies, paper 1, 2, 3, 4, have been hovering around 400. Is almost the same. Now look at this. इसमें क्या additional है? Bhakti movement is additional, but there is just Meera Bhai's mention, Bhajan's mention. It talks about shared prosperity, bounty that nature has to offer. कुछ technical नहीं है. ये तुम्हें भी पता है कि locust attack से crops को loss होता है. Here some more points are given, so it encourages biodiversity, builds healthy soil. So concepts of physical geography, you should know. If I ask you what is a twister, what is a tornado, what is a tsunami, you should be able to tell me in one line. You can talk about International Court of Justice. So for example, recently International Court of Justice has talked about environmental rights. Please use your PYQs thoroughly and use your peer groups and your friends for more interactive such sessions where you can gain more out of it. Don't waste too much time debating issues.
Congratulations on clearing UPSC 2024. Watching you succeed is really inspiring.
Thanks. I have been in your shoes. I know how overwhelming the start feels.
Exactly. There's so much to cover, I don't even know where to begin.
I felt the same. That's why I joined the GS Foundation course by Vision IAS, which offers structured classes, expert faculty, and regular revision. It gave me clarity and momentum.
And you stayed consistent with it?
Yes, I followed the complete roadmap offered by the course. If you're aiming for 2026, start with this course. It offers you holistic coverage with every stage of the exam covered seamlessly. This is where your journey will truly begin.
Got it. I will definitely explore the course. Where can I find the details?
Just visit their website or call on the given numbers.
Welcome to this session on answer writing. Has any one of you ever appeared in the mains examination before? No? Okay. And how many of you are preparing for 2026 as your first attempt? And 27? Okay, all right, very nice. So, welcome to the class. So what is your expectation from this session? What do you think we are going to achieve today at the end of this session? What is there about answer writing that you already don't know? You have written sufficient number of answers yourselves, right? You've cleared the board examinations, correct? So what do you think is it that I can tell you about this examination or answer writing that you probably would not know already? Is it introduction, body, conclusion? I'm sure you all are aware of that already. What is it that we are looking for? Is it the recipe to overcome the mental block that we face when we sit down to write the answers? Sometimes what happens, we already know the content, but the ideas are all jumbled up in the head and they're not flowing through the pen. Why does that happen? What do you think is answer writing? Answer writing is nothing but clarifying those thoughts and writing them down in a structured manner. Okay? Structure, structure, structure. Structure is the basic ingredient to all the recipes of good answers. Okay? You can never have anything, whether it is a presentation. The fact that I am standing before you in today's class, I also have a structure in mind which I am going to follow. If I didn't have a structure, how would my class look like? I would simply be here telling you about random ideas, throwing them at you, right? Why do you think ChatGPT is more successful currently or is getting more successful than Google? What is the difference? Google also gives you the same information, doesn't it? Then why do you think ChatGPT has become more popular? Whatever you ask, it answers in a very structured format. It answers to you like a normal human being would. You know, it's like you're talking to some other human being. Versus what happens in Google, when you push for a result, what you get is jumble of set of links. You're expected to click on them, read about it, and then summarize it in your own head. Versus, what does ChatGPT do? It makes your life way more easier by structuring all the content that is there and then give it to you in a very easy to read format. Why do you think people are becoming more pally with ChatGPT? It's not anything, it's not so much information, but as much it is the convenience and the ease of reading that subject. Correct? It feels very familiar when you read that. And that is exactly what you have to strive to do in answer writing. You have to make your answers much easier to read. The more hodgepodge your answer is, the less marks the examiner will give. Okay? Now, how do we do that is something that we will learn during the course of this session. I want to start by beginning one quote which says, answer writing is not knowledge tested. It is not a test of your knowledge. Your knowledge is tested in the prelim stage itself. Answer writing is clarity displayed. You have to display clarity in your thoughts, which is what the examiner expects. Okay? So we all know that answer writing session is for the main stage of the examination, which includes 7 papers. Of course, there are 9 papers, out of which 7 are used for calculating your marks, right? Which includes essay, 4 papers of general studies, correct? And of course, your optional. Now, out of those subjects which are common, essay and GS paper 4, which is ethics, they are completely 2 different ball games altogether. Okay? And when I mean different, it means it requires a different strategy, it requires a different kind of hard work and different kind of input. The session today pertains to specifically GS paper 1, GS paper 2, okay, and 3, which is your general studies paper 1, general studies paper 2, and paper 3. If you look at the marks of the people who have scored in the mains examination, let's talk about last year. The marks are such that in the essay paper, the difference between the highest scorer and the lowest scorer can range up to 70 to 90 marks. 70 to 90 marks in the essay paper. Similar story goes for the ethics paper. But in your GS paper 1, 2, and 3, the difference between the highest marks and the lowest marks is roughly about 40. Which tells you what? Which tells you that the margin to increase your marks is very less in these papers. All right? So if you have to score more in the mains examination, you have to inch by inch score 1 mark, half mark extra in that every question to get a whopping score of, let's say, 40 marks plus in each of those papers. Right? There are 20 questions in each of those papers. And if we score, let's say, about 1.5 mark extra, then you get a total of, let's say, 20, 30 marks above your peers, and that is how you cut through the competition. Take a look at the marks of the toppers. The marks of the toppers in these papers or general studies, paper 1, 2, 3, 4, have been hovering around 400. Anybody who has cleared this exam with flying colors and who has, wanted to get a service of his or her preference, 400 plus is something that you are expected to do. Although among toppers, the variation is quite a lot, 470, 460, some have even got even 394. But I can safely say that 400 plus is a score that you should be targeting when it comes to these 4 papers. All right? Okay. Okay, so before we start to practice certain techniques, certain methodologies by which we can improve our answer writing, I want you to first step into the mind of the examiner. Okay? For a while, just consider yourself to be someone who's checking a paper and not writing one. As an examiner, today we are going to evaluate this question. The question says, with examples, discuss how the cultural traditions from various regions of India get reflected in regional music. Okay, how the cultural traditions, are you able to understand the question? How the cultural traditions of India are reflected in its regional music. Some points crop up. Now understand how your brain is functioning. The moment you read a question, your brain tries to affirm, हाँ ये ठीक है, that is correct. And it tries to bring up 2-3 examples related to it, yes. And then after that, there is a complete blank. This is how our mind works, right? We face a sudden blank after the first 2-3 instances of whatever thing you can remember. This is what we have to overcome, and I will teach you in this class how we are going to overcome this mental barrier. But for now, let's just read 2 answer copies as examiner. This is the first answer copy. All right? The candidate, of course, you have to be a fair examiner, so please bear with the handwriting. Let's try to read through it. Okay? The candidate says, music as an art form has been practiced and performed in India since time immemorial. Amir Khusro is considered to be the proponent for bringing Persian cultural music into India. Okay, then he talks about Khayal music. Then I can see there is a mention of Carnatic music. Then there is Gundicha brothers, which are proponents of Dhrupad music. Then some international music. Then music and culture go hand in hand as it invigorates energy and enthusiasm, passion. Then he talks about music talks about musical instruments. Again, Carnatic music is performed in southern states with sitar, veena, MS Subbalakshmi. Then northern states, again he mentions Birju Maharaj, Zakir Hussain, etc. And finally, towards the end, the music represents the culture, society of the people and their emotional level and how it brings the society closer. This is one answer. The pace at which I am reading is almost equivalent to the pace at which your examiner will read the answer copy. It will not be slower than this. Okay, it's almost the same. Now let's read okay, now this is a 10 marker question. Can you rate the answer copy out of 10? 4? Anyone else? At least marks to do. How much would you score? 0? 4 to 5? Okay. How much do you think is the average score in UPSC answers? Let's say it's a 10 marker. What would be the best score of a topper? 5, 6 maximum, right? And what would be a worst score? It can be 0 also, all right? And people who usually clear this exam have about 50% marks, right? Of the mains examination, 70, 50 that we see. Now, you tell me something, 4, okay, you are giving 4 to this answer. Let's read another answer copy and then we'll discuss. Same question, nothing changes, only the answer, all right? India's rich and diverse cultural traditions are most evident in the regional music of its motherland. I can see a map in which there is Pahadi Geet, Hindustani music, Shankar Dev's Bhavna, tribal music, Carnatic music, Meera's bhajans in Rajasthan. And then there is reflection of cultural traditions. So there is Carnatic Three Ratna, so Tyagraj, Muthuswami, Shama Sastri, their names are mentioned. Persian influence on gharanas, bhakti movements with the spirit of ending caste differences, Mirabai's bhajans, tribal music which exhibits their daily activities and oneness with nature. Pahadi Geet reflects their way of life, for example in Jamoli district, Uttarakhand. And then finally there is a conclusion which says recent proposal for Museum for Carnatic Music reflects their importance to break free from colonial mindset. And then some steps have been given as to how it should be protected. For example, include in the school curriculum, etc. Now please give marks to this answer. 6, 5. Why? Is there anyone who's scoring it equivalent or lower to the previous answer? I would like to know the rationale. Now, I would like to know the reason why you are giving this answer 6 marks or 5 marks. Presentation is good, look neater. Okay, चलो ये तो एक बहुत basic fact है about answer writing, है ना? That you've been told since time immemorial, since you started writing answer in the first grade, at least our generation did, right? So you were told कि neatly लिखो, अच्छा लिखो, diagram अच्छा draw करो, fine. Then what else? This answer is directly hitting the demand of the question. So was this answer not addressing the question? The question was, with examples, discuss how the cultural traditions from various regions of India get reflected in regional music. In my opinion, the content of the two answers is not very different. Because if you see, here Carnatic music is mentioned, here also it is mentioned. Then mentioned about Persian music, Amir Khusro with examples. ठीक है, Gundicha brothers, international music is also mentioned. Again, northern states also it has mentioned. Then he has also talked about the proponents of some of the Carnatic music, right? So content, in my opinion, is almost the same. Now look at this. इसमें क्या additional है? Bhakti movement is additional, but there is just Mirabai's mention, bhajans mention. Tribal music, there is no mention of any example. Simply the fact that tribals, it reflects their daily activities and oneness with nature. Is this something that you already don't know? This is such a simple basic point. है ना? This is such a basic point. Now tell me. And the map merely is showing what is already written in the answer. There is nothing additional in the map. What the person has done is very smartly understood the demand of the question. I'll tell you how. Number one, from various regions of India. That means the question is asking you about the regional expanse. So she has tried to cover up all the region, north, south, east, west. कुछ रह ना जाए, कहीं पे लगा होगा कि यार missing है, तो you added tribal or whatever, because this basic knowledge you also have that there is a tribal belt in the central India, right? Secondly, she has used direct reference of keywords from the question itself. The question says, reflection, how cultural traditions from various regions of India get reflected in regional music. And she writes reflection of cultural traditions. It's the same words which have been reused. So it makes you think that she has understood the demand of the question, whereas the other person has not. But if you look at the core content of the two answers, they are almost similar. What else makes it different? This looks like someone जिसके दिमाग में जो जो आता गया, he just penned it down, right? पहले यहाँ पे कर्नाटक आया, फिर इंटरनेशनल आ गया, फिर से कर्नाटक आया, तो फिर से कर्नाटक लिख दिया. This person also knows of similar points but has not structured his or her answer. He has merely thought and just started writing the answer. Although, if you look carefully, even this question has an answer, has an introduction, body and conclusion. But still there is a structure which is missing. The readability of the answer is not as good, which is what we discussed in the case of ChatGPT and Google. Right? The readability has to be easier, which makes examiner को आप जितना परेशान करोगे वो उतना आपको परेशान करेगा. The more you trouble him, the less marks he will give you. The more you make it easier, simpler for him to understand, the better marks you will score. Okay? So, for your information, this answer copy belongs to rank 1 Ishita Kishore. That's about 2 years ago. She was rank 1 in the UPSC examination. So this is her answer. Now tell me, content-wise, knowledge-wise, is there too much of a difference? Not really. Here I can say she has value added by giving some contemporary schemes and examples or a way forward, which the other candidate did not. But still, the marks in the two difference of marks between the two answers will be at least 2 marks. And those two marks will add up to 40 marks by the end of this paper. And 40 in each, chalo 40 bhi nahi, 30 bhi laga lo, in each of the GS paper makes it about 90 to 100 marks in your entire mains. And that is what makes all the difference. Is this understood? So, first point, actionable items in this session is about actionable items. First and foremost, please get it clear in your head that we are scrambling for 1 or 2 marks in each answer. Alright, so every answer that you are writing, try to think about what more value addition that you can do in this answer, right? So that you get that additional half mark. Okay, first and foremost. Next, let's do a small exercise. Let's attempt a question from this year's paper. This is, have you all seen the mains paper? You have seen all the mains papers, essay, general studies. Have you all seen? Okay. So you must have come across this question. This question is from general studies paper 2, right? And it says, civil society organizations are often perceived as being anti-state actors than non-state actors. Do you agree? Are you able to comprehend the question? Civil society organization. What are civil society organizations? Pressure groups, environmental organizations, NGOs, non-governmental organizations, right? All those come under civil society organizations. So the question is a 10 marker. It says they are considered more as anti-state. For example, anti-India zyada hai than non-state. I mean, not India is not the right synonym, but non-state. So they are not really non-governmental, but they are anti-governmental. This is the crux of the question. Okay. Now, I want you to think for a minute and tell me what all points, what comes in your mind if you had to write the answer. See, this is a question which really does not require previous knowledge per se, right? You all know about NGOs, you all know about non-governmental organizations. Just tell me, and we'll discuss this, no need to write, just tell me what do you think would be the points that could come in this answer. I'll jot them down here itself. Okay, we know we have to start with an intro, body, conclusion, okay? Well, let's start with an intro. Whatever introduction you feel we can write. Tell me what can we write? Definition of civil society organizations. So what are those? Can you frame a definition? Now, in this examination, all the definitions will not be mucked up beforehand. You will only know the concept, but you will be expected to write a definition out of whatever you know in the exam, because everything cannot be mucked up, right? So frame a definition right now. Which are not a part of the government, or the state for a broader understanding, but raise issues of the public concern, okay? But public concern is expressed, or they work for the people, betterment of the people and society. This is an acceptable introduction. Now, what do we write in the body? You tell me, don't give me sentences which are fillers. Give me points. Okay, what do I write as a heading? Why perception, okay? Why they are perceived as being anti-state rather than non-state. Okay, tell me points. जो भी आ रहा है बोलो, यहाँ तो नहीं नेगेटिव मार्किंग हो रही. Come on. Huh? They are anti-establishment. They are usually anti-government protests. Okay. Anti-government or anti-establishment protests. Okay. Or they are extra vigilant, over vigilant. Okay, so sometimes they make an issue out of nothing. Good point. Opposition to development projects. Or all of you jog your brains. You know this. तुमने enough protests देखे हैं news में. You have seen enough आंदोलन्स. Come on. It acts like a pressure group. Okay. Yes, this is the point I was waiting for. Pressure group is also an acceptable point, although pressure group does not necessarily have to be anti-state. Okay, but I'll take that. And then you have foreign funding. Most of the money comes from abroad and they are used as an agent for driving international agenda rather than national agenda. Okay, so that is why they are perceived as this and this. Okay, and then we can, 5 points is fine for 10 marker just for our practice purposes. And then what will you conclude the answer by saying? Yes, so there is a need for civil society organizations to keep the government accountable, but a balance has to be maintained. So you take a balanced approach. That's absolutely fine. Okay. Now, this is an exercise that we did absolutely independent of any content that we have read about this topic. You all agree? We did not read anything. Now, let's do one thing. Let's read some notes on civil society organizations. Okay, this is just a 1-page note on civil society organizations. Let's see how the notes are framed. Civil society organizations, we talked about definition. Okay, so we were a little struggling to define it. So what do you do when you make notes? You say they are non-state, non-market, voluntary association. How much space did it occupy in your notes? Hardly any, but you have the keywords. Okay, now when you are framing any answer on CSOs, you can use these terms. All right, you can use these terms. So, yeah. Zoom? Okay. Better? Everybody? Okay. So, then examples. Examples, NGOs, trade unions, faith-based organizations, advocacy-based pressure groups, all that. All right. What is the role? What is the role of civil society organizations? They, first and foremost, they perform advocacy and awareness among people, okay, about an issue or a topic, about people's rights. Then their job is also service delivery. Sometimes they help the government in last mile connectivity of service delivery. Accountability and transparency, something that you mentioned in the conclusion, that it holds the government accountable. Social audits is an example of that. Citizens' participation is ensured because there is no proper formal channel or platform on which the government can interact with the citizens, right? So they act as a government's hearing aid and a platform to participate with the people. Grassroots innovation, sometimes simpler ideas at the grassroots are executed by these organizations, okay? And social cohesion, so it brings a community together. So for example, your RWAs, all they have a role in building the society and community, okay? Now this is one. Second is, what is the difference between government or civil society organizations, or if I may say state and civil society organizations? Civil society organizations will always have a bottom-up approach. It will always come from the bottom. The decisions, the thinking will come from the grassroots. Whereas in the government, it is a top-down. Here, the authority is more of moral, okay, and social. The authority that the state derives from is the constitution, so it's legal and constitutional. It is issue specific, they are broad and universal, governance oriented, and this is people centric, whereas this is rule based. We are trying to follow a certain set of laws. Clear? Then you can also see the relationship between the two. So civil society organization, they are the third sector. They can be, CSOs can be considered as the third sector. So they complement and democratize the role of the state. Okay? And then finally, what are the challenges related to it? So funding, yes, you can heavy reliance on foreign funding. So almost 22,000 crores in 2021-22. Regulatory and legal hurdles, FCRA rules. So there are a lot of regulatory barriers which does not allow them to function properly. Accountability and transparency issues. So some of them are called briefcase NGOs. They are used for siphoning funds. Representation, legitimacy deficit. Who is telling, are they actually representing people or are they just making noise? Most of them are elite or urban centric. There is no talk about rural people, correct? Political affiliation, trust deficit with the state, crackdown on activists. These are all problems which create a trust deficit between the state and the civil society organizations. Now, let's go back to the question. Now, if you have to write an answer to this question, let's do it again. What do we write? In introduction, I'm not going to write it on the board this time. Let's just verbally discuss it. In the introduction, what are CSOs? CSOs are non-state, non-market, voluntary, भी fresh सबने रटा है, right? Okay, then we talk about, so if you're talking about non-state, you can talk about their, you don't have to copy your notes. The question is not asking you about their functions. ठीक है, आपको कॉपी पेस्ट नहीं करना है, क्वेश्चन की डिमांड समझो. इट इज़ जस्ट अ 10 मार्कर. तुम्हारे पास ना टाइम है ना स्पेस है इतना सब कुछ लिखने की. इफ़ यू हैव टू राइट द फंक्शन, राइट इन वन सेंटेंस, ओके, दैट they are responsible for advocacy and awareness, they bring about social cohesion. जो भी 2-3 पॉइंट तुम्हें याद है, just mention that in one sentence and done. And then you can compare the role of the state versus the, not in a tabular format. Again, the main crux of the question is why they are considered anti-state. So we'll straight away come to the challenges, elaborate that part. Understood? We'll elaborate why there is a trust deficit between them and the state. Foreign funding, FCRA, regulations, correct? Briefcase NGOs, these are all points and data that you will mention in your answer to make it more robust and answer the demand of the question. All right. Now, can you tell me how much was the difference between the first answer that we wrote and the second answer that we've just discussed? If you had to give yourself marks out of 10, first answer you would give how much? Come on, be honest. 3, 1. Okay. 3, 1. Anyone who's giving 4, 5? Any liberal examiner here? Okay. And what about the second answer? 4, 5. That means something is better the next time round. This is the only difference between the answers of normal average people who are simply attending classes, listening to the lecturer and not making notes. Whereas the answers of toppers shine out not only because they have a structure, they have relevant keywords in their answers, they have relevant data, they have proper information which will impress the examiner. I am happy to say that this industry, this examination has moved past that stage where introduction, body and conclusion would fetch you marks. everybody knows how to structure an answer into simple parts. Everybody knows that what is the demand of the question. These are not simpler points, and these are not, complicated points anymore. Everybody knows that. What people don't know is now the difference in a good answer and a bad answer is in these keywords, is in these statistics, is in the data, is in all the value addition material that you give in your answers. Rest, everyone is able to do the calculation in the examination itself, that what is required, how much do I have to write, what is the structure, what are the subparts, everybody is able to do that. Okay, so level up. Okay, level up your preparation. We have to do it smartly. And since you all are living in the era of AI, we will learn how to use AI to our advantage. Okay? Okay, let's start. We've discussed this. So generally the steps to answer writing that people normally feel are, first I will complete the syllabus. I will finish all my classes and then I will attempt tests. That fine day is never going to come. That's breaking news for you. Prepare handy notes. This is an activity which can go on for eons and eons. The world will keep evolving. You will keep making notes. You will never reach an end date for this. All right? Memorize and revise the content. Take 10 lifetimes. It's not happening. Clear? And practice answer writing. Again, it's a distant dream. All this never happens, will never happen. You need to change your attitude, your approach to this exam, to this strategy. Generally, people think, I'm going to bust the myth, that I am not well prepared. मैंने अभी तो पढ़ा ही नहीं ये topic. मैंने तो अभी कुछ इसका class नहीं attend किया. मेरे notes ready नहीं है. How can I write an answer? Did we just attend a class? Did we study the topic? No. We knew a little about a topic which is generally discussed in the newspapers. We simply refined our notes and we wrote an answer. And you need to follow this approach, okay? So, what you need to do is, look, you will never know enough. Remember always these three points. You are aware. You are generally aware. It's not that you don't know anything. UPSC is an examination of general awareness at the end of the day. So you will never feel fully prepared, but at the same time, you will never feel completely lost also. We are not working for ISRO, right? You have written answers before. So have the confidence that you can write a basic, decent answer. I have just told you the only difference between exceptional answers and good answers now is in the value addition, which will keep happening as you go along in your preparation. And practice will only make it easier. The more you delay and procrastinate, the more difficult it will get for you to write in the examination. All right? So we will follow something called reverse engineering, which we know that the Chinese are extreme masters of. They have almost built the entire world following this strategy, right? So we will first write answers. No matter how good, bad, ugly, does not matter. We will write answers. Then, as we go along, we will prepare content, because every time we read an answer, we think about a topic in a more structured and in-depth manner. For example, now, CSOs, you will think about them a little differently from what you did earlier, correct? Summarize as per the need of the exam. So you prepare good notes, collect the content, and you know how much space and time you would have in the examination to write about that topic. So you will accordingly pick content. And finally, complete the syllabus as you go along. It's not the other way around, okay? We don't have to complete the syllabus first. We have to start writing answers first. Syllabus अपने आप धीरे धीरे होता जाएगा. And you will feel more motivated to do it. Okay? Okay. Take 5 minutes to write an answer to this question, and then we'll discuss the answer. Okay? Yes, I'll zoom it for you. What is the agricultural, cultural, and economic significance of harvest festivals in India? Okay? I am not interested in long verbose sentences. I am not interested in editorial type articles. I am only interested in multi-dimensional, multi-point answers which cover all the subparts of the question. Okay, your time starts now. No need to write the question, please. This is only for your reference. It's a 10 marker, so try and finish it in 150 words. Two more minutes to go. Start wrapping up. One last minute. Okay, we can stop writing now. Time's up. All right. Okay, we'll start off. Introduction. Anyone would like to read out their introduction? You cannot, don't want to read out the whole sentence, it's all right. Yeah, please go ahead.
India is country of festival, agriculture being the livelihood activity of around 60% people automatically attract different festivities around it across the country. For example, Onam in South, Bihu in Assam and Baisakhi in Punjab.
Very good. Good introduction. He starts with the importance of agriculture in India. 60% of the people depend on it. And then, of course, India is a country of festivals. Then he talks about the examples. Anyone else who has done anything differently? Go ahead, please. Oh, you mentioned about Jallianwala Bagh. Historical. Okay, how exactly have you written it? The importance of harvest festivals. After independence. Okay, so before independence, you've mentioned Jallianwala Bagh because it happened on 13th April 1919, yes. And then after independence? Contribution. Okay. Okay, it's a little unconventional way. That's all right. Okay. Anyone else? Yes, you can start. How do you define a harvest festival? You can start by defining harvest festivals. How do we define harvest festivals? What are harvest festivals? At the time of harvest, so you can give examples. Examples would be, right, Baisakhi, Bihu, Pongal. Yes, all these are harvest festivals. So you can give their examples. Okay, now let's come to their agricultural significance. This is a keyword, tricky keyword. What is their agricultural significance? Yes, correct. End of sowing season or harvesting season? It's a beginning of a new sowing season, right? So, flow of money, it tells about it celebrates the hard work of the agriculturalist or the farmer, right? It talks about shared prosperity, bounty that nature has to offer. So you can mention that. Crop surplus is there, right? Buffer stocks are, you can say, augmented. Then all this you can talk about. Regional cropping pattern is determined, correct? So you can mention about that. What about cultural significance? Social cohesion, solidarity among people. Sorry? Brotherhood, okay, yes. Or maintains continuity and cultural traditions of India, right? Rituals and yes, or You all have written this point about unity and diversity, social cohesion. ये एक ही point है जो सब अलग अलग words में बता रहे हैं. Move. Culture में और क्या आता है? Now this is how you have to learn to think. Culture में और क्या आता है? If I ask you about culture of India, तुम क्या क्या बताओगे मुझे? Let's say I am a foreigner. You'll talk about dance, you'll talk about music, you'll talk about clothes, you'll talk about food. Why aren't you mentioning all that in this? यही तो culture है. So this is what you have to learn in the examination. You will never be prepared, fully prepared with a question beforehand. वो नहीं होगा. You have to learn. So इशिता का आंसर कॉपी देख के समझ आया ना? You understood that how whatever she knew, she molded that in the format of the answer. So you know what is culture. When you are not able to understand anything, come down to etymology. आप word पे आ जाओ और उस word को break down करो कि culture मुझे बताना है. So what is the culture? If I ask you culture, you told me about all these things. Rituals, festivals, clothes, food, whatever, all those stuff. So you mention about that cultural significance. है ना? Then economic. Supply, yes, okay. So more food, bumper crops, we are assuming bumper crop, then income of the farmer is augmented, right? Purchasing power of the farmer is improved. What about of the consumers, people like us? Better quality, or we get food. पहले तो food ही आ रहा है, right? So what happens when there is surplus food production? Food inflation comes down, right? So it impacts the other sectors of the economy. Allied agricultural activities are also augmented, they are supplemented, correct? So all the linkages you can make on your own. तुम खुद सोचो, and if you are stuck anywhere in the exam, take 2 points. One is break down it word wise. Okay, so culture में क्या क्या I know, how can I fit that here? Second is, what all do I know about this topic? So what all do I know about agricultural and its allied activities? Take an example. Jute ले लिया, cotton ले लिया, ठीक है? गेहूँ ले लिया, चावल ले लिया. Think about it. अगर बहुत सारा गेहूँ, exports, है ना? So your mind will automatically start thinking about the other dimensions that can be covered. But with this, I have to give you a small warning that you cannot do this in every answer in the examination. You will run out of time and space. I don't know how many of you have managed to write the entire answer, but I'm confident most of you could not complete your answer. Now this is another level of challenge in answer writing. Okay, so you cannot wait कि अब मैं एग्जाम में जाके I will start thinking and then I will write my answer and then suddenly I will score well. That will never happen. Some answers, some topics like our notes on CSO have to be prepared beforehand so that we can just simply start jotting them down. इतना दिमाग में वो print होना चाहिए आपके अपने notes का. And some questions where you have not thought about it from that perspective, which the examiner asks, then you break it down into what do I know about this word, what do I know about this word. Clear? So we have to tackle both the things parallelly. Okay. The perplexity of UPSC questions often lies not in their complexity, but in their ability to test conceptual clarity and presence of mind under pressure. Okay, the challenge with these questions is not so much that how complex they are. कुछ बहुत complex नहीं होगा. If you look at the mains paper, even at this stage when you have just started your preparation, you might feel that yes, this is something that I already know. It's quite fairly understandable. It's quite fairly understood, right? But the challenge is in writing an answer, a good answer to a simple question that is tougher. Believe me, in this examination, it is easier to write an answer to a tough question, but tougher to write an answer to a simple question. Because what will make you stand out is what can greatly vary. For instance, we just discussed this question, right? All of you had similar answers. Now, who do you think the examiner will give more marks to? That half mark extra. To someone A who would have structured it better, presented it better, and B who would have given more examples and more dimensions under each of the 3 subheads. Okay, so this is what we have to strive to do. Okay, let's do one more exercise, and this is purely on the board. This is called keyword spotting. All right, this is one question. You have to tell me, when you come across this question in the examination, what are the keywords that you will highlight and look into? Sorry. Yeah. Let's start with the first line. The question is flooding. So first keyword that we will talk about is flooding, but we are not talking about flooding in general, we are talking about flooding in urban areas or urban flooding. Okay. Next keyword, identify. Climate induced disaster. So first and foremost, fit the framework in your head that your answer has to convince the examiner and revolve around the dimension of urban flooding because of climate change. It cannot be simply urban flooding. You have to link the fact that there is a rise in the intensity and frequency of extreme weather events which is causing urban flooding more frequently. Okay. Now, next, discuss the causes. So this is one subpart that has to be answered. Next, features of two such major floods. So that means in the last 2 decades you have to give 2 examples also, and you have to give the features also. Next, policies and frameworks in India that are tackling such floods. Now, same question, okay, same question. I want you to, okay, so you've understood, this is the keyword spotting. So what do? We have understood the demand of the question, we have understood the, identify the keywords, what are the different subparts to be answered in this question. We'll start with an introduction. Whatever introduction, what would be a suitable introduction for this question? Current based, you can talk about recent floods. Very recently, it's happening right now in northern India, correct? Because these kind of extreme weather events were unheard of, the kind of long range spell of rain that we are witnessing. You can talk about that. Then you can talk about what will be the second part of the question. How climate change has led to increase in urban flooding. Okay? One short structure on this. Then, so for example, if this is your answer copy, this is, मान लो 15 marker है, this is a 15 marker, so you will have 3 pages for this. Okay? In this part, here up till here, you will have your introduction. Okay? This will answer, next you will answer the first part of the question which says causes. So, or you are linking it with climate change, that why it is a climate induced disaster. Then, here you can talk about the second part. Second part will talk about the causes. Causes. Why this is happening. Here you are establishing the link. Okay. Here you can talk about the causes. Okay. Causes. And then third would be the, where you will mention about global warming, rise in anthropogenic emissions of greenhouse gases. You can mention that. Okay. Then causes may 4 or 5 points. Then here maybe you will talk about features. What are the features of urban flooding? How are they different from normal flooding? Again, common sense. That's an impact. Yes, you can say the impact of urban flooding is more severe on life and property. But what are the other differences in the features? Drainage system, it's linked to the drainage system, okay. Because of poor drainage system, there is, so the peak flooding in urban flooding, so jo peak water levels hote hain, that is 2 to 8 times compared to what we see in normal flooding.
UPSC mains demands more than just knowledge, it requires the art of presenting that knowledge clearly, concisely, and convincingly on paper. Without the right approach, even well-prepared content can fall short. You need structured guidance to overcome bottlenecks and translate your preparation into well-structured, impactful answers. Vision IAS present a specially curated offline and online masterclasses for answer writing in Delhi. It offers 5 focus sessions to build strong answer writing fundamentals, Craft impactful introductions and conclusions. Use examples, data, and illustrations effectively. Practice through live demonstrations. Receive personalized feedback on evaluated assignments. Learn proven strategies from UPSC toppers. Attend the free orientation on 18th August, with the classes starting from 19th August at 5 p.m.
So the peak levels suddenly go very high because of poor drainage system. Okay, so these are some of the features that, so this is a very logical question, isn't it? How urban flooding is different from normal flooding? Why do we need different kind of guidelines, NDMA guidelines, different steps for urban flooding? Because it's a different disaster with different kind of repercussions. All right, so features. And then finally, yes? Yes, yes, you can talk about the impact. So more loss to life and property, you can talk about economic livelihood is impacted of the urban poor. Yes, that can be one of the features. Yes, yes, why not? These all can be part of the impact, okay, and how it is different from normal flooding. Then, after features, mention features of two such. So you have to give examples. जो features तुमने mention किए, that has to be using the examples that you have discussed, okay? So you can talk about Chennai floods, you can talk about Mumbai floods. There are ample number of examples. And then finally, your last page would be for policies and frameworks. Again, here you will maximum write 4 to 5 points, and then will be your conclusion. Your 3 pages are filled. And all this thinking, recalling, and writing has to be done in approximately 7 minutes, 7 to 8 minutes. This is the only time you have, which is why answer writing is not so much a game of language, beautiful sentences. This is what I keep telling students. Normally people feel मैं बड़ी editorialish language लिख दूँ कि बहुत ही, you know, very nicely worded. Nobody cares. They want to see all these subparts. They want to see that you have addressed the question, and you hardly have time and space for that. So please make your notes very crisp and concise. उतना ही notes में लिखो which you think you will be able to remember and replicate in the examination. Okay? One more exercise we'll do on the board itself. Because this is an activity, this session is related to actionable items, so we will keep thinking about different actions that we can take to make our preparation better. This is a third exercise. I want you to take 10 seconds to tell me what will be the structure of your answer. This is this year's question. Okay, stop. Tell me, structure of your answer and some points also. इतना ही time मिलेगा exam में. Structure. Definition of what? Can you define it? बोलो.
Globalization is an activity where the world turn into a borderless society, and the flow of information, people, technology, and ideas are free.
Fine, acceptable. Okay, next. Please. In India, yes, but overall, no. Okay? All right. Okay, what else? Next, structure ये हो गया, तुमने एक definition दिया globalization का. अब mind you, हर introduction definition नहीं होगा. Only when you know a good definition, go ahead with it. Okay? Otherwise, you can start by saying globalization is the norm of what has been going on in the last, let's say, 50 odd years. Something like that you can say, even if you are not confident. He knew of a good definition, so he mentioned that. Does not mean every answer has to start with the definition. All right, next part of the question. How will you answer this? Aggressive consumer culture. Give me 5 points. Quick. Quick. Think on your feet. Rise of e-commerce, very good. Targeted advertising, okay. Youth, children, okay. Cultural integration. How? FOMO, FOMO and peer pressure, Lububu dolls, right? Okay. Do you think, the question is asking you, पहले तो तुम हाँ या ना में जवाब दो. The question is asking you, do you think? Is your answer yes or no? So first yes or no, whatever you want to say. All right. And mind you, the question says, do you think that globalization results in only? Now is your answer yes or is it no? See, that's what makes all the difference. Even one word can change. People who did not read this question carefully would have answered like you, yes, yes. Globalization and consumerist culture, aggressive consumerism. But the question says, is it the only outcome of globalization? Absolutely. So first you talk about, yes, although it is encouraging an aggressive consumerist culture, right? But at the same time, there are other benefits. So like he talked about a borderless society, technological integration, all those points can be part of that. And then you conclude your answer. So this activity, okay, even if you are not writing an answer, if you come across any test series, any paper, any question in your day-to-day normal, you can just take 15 seconds to think that what will I write in this answer? Because this activity itself, look, at the end of the day, the brain is a muscle memory. Like every other muscle in your body, you have to train it to function better. And which is why the more you train your brain to structure an answer before you start using your pen, you will actually end up writing better answers. Okay? So even if you're not picking up the pen, force your brain to think about the structure of the answer. Clear? Right? Okay. Now for the same question, I want you to give me an introduction, apart from what we have discussed. What are the different kinds of introduction? Even if you don't know, kya ho sakti hai? Let's say you can take the help of Google. What different introductions would you like to give to this answer? Contrast with pre-globalization era. Okay. Can I start with the impact of globalization directly? Right? So one is you have given about the definition. Can I start with the impact? Can I start with the extent? Can I start with some example? Right? Can I start with some data? That is what you can do with introductions. So now we are just going to briefly discuss what are the different kinds of introductions that can be given to a question. Okay. Types of introductions. Definition, we are already a pro at it by now. Recent event, okay. Report, you can talk about a report which gives you statistics on globalization. It could be related to any parameter. Movement of people, movement of technology, right? Integration of, let's say, societies, anything. Then data, fact. You can talk about background, overall understanding of the issue, correct? And then finally, if nothing works, you can summarize the question itself. I'll show you examples of each of these. Definition-based introduction. This is rank 3 Junaid Ahmed's copy. So the question talks about referendums. Okay, I'm not going into the details of the question. Just understand the question is talking about referendums. So he defines by saying referendum is what? Referendum is a tool of direct democracy wherein people directly vote on an issue or policy of the country. This is the most basic definition that you can have of referendum. That where people are directly voting on an issue or a policy. Simple? Simple. All right. Next is report-based introductions. So this is Akshat Jain and Ayan Jain's copies. Akshat Jain, the question talks about desertification in India or increasing desertification in India. So he says, as per the State of Our Environment Report 2017, 8 states of India find large areas of their land suffering from desertification. And he mentions the names of those 8 states. This is a report-based introduction. So desertification pe question hai does not mean you always have to start with the definition of desertification. You can simply talk about the extent of desertification. Similarly here, the question talks about fiscal stability of states in India. Okay? How fiscally strong are the states in India? And he says, the Arth Niti report of Niti Aayog has pointed out issues related to fiscal stability of states in India. He's not mentioning any data. He's not giving any facts. He just knows that there is this report which talks about this issue, and he has mentioned that. Do not hesitate. Even if you think, I know the name of the report, but I don't know uske andar exactly kya data likha tha. See, both of them have mentioned the report. Even Akshat, for that matter, has not written a very precise data. He has just written 8 states are suffering from extreme desertification. उतना तो वैसे भी तुम मैप देख के बता सकते हो. Correct? Alright. So, the report-based introductions. Recent event-based. Examine the link between the recent locust attack and climate change. If the question itself is giving you something related to recent, you have to address that in your answer. It must be mentioned. It tells the examiner that you are aware of what the issue is. You are aware of the contemporary problems or whatever, or the current affairs, whatever has been going on. So you mentioned that recently Western India experienced large-scale locust attack which led to loss of crop of farmers. Again, look at it. It's so simple. कुछ टेक्निकल नहीं है, ये तुम्हें भी पता है कि locust attack से crops को loss होता है. And that is what is written. The only additional point he knew was that these locusts travel via this path and they originated in Somalia. So he mentioned that origin Somalia, showed that path on a map. Jitna aata hai, tell the examiner तुम्हें आता है, because he has no other way of knowing तुम्हें क्या आता है, except what is written in your copy. So be a little smart about it. That's why structuring is important, because those 15 seconds you gather all the information, force your brain to recollect whatever it knows, and then you know, okay, I'll put this in the introduction, this will be in this point, and then you can finally, uske baad, the job is only of the hand to jot it down. 50% of the job is done by the brain when you're structuring the answer before writing. Okay, next. Summarize the question. This is my favorite kind of introduction. When you know nothing, just rewrite what is written in the question. Okay? If you feel trapped, if you feel stuck. So for instance, even though the Representation of People's Act has been amended from time to time, the issues pertaining to criminalization and influence of money power remain unresolved in Indian politics. Okay? Now, read the introduction. Representation of People Act was formulated to ensure free and fair elections in the country. Simple. Despite a long list of provisions, criminalization and influence of money power. Same words. Criminalization and influence of money power. They is a recurring problem in the Indian election. वही points हैं, वही words हैं. Criminalization and influence of money power remain unresolved. Criminalization and influence of money power is a recurring problem in the Indian election. When you feel stuck, but this is only when you feel stuck. When nothing works, you rephrase the question. Because what happens, if you think about it psychologically, an examiner is a human being who's checking multiple answers one after the other. He must have already checked this answer in at least, let's say, 10 copies. Correct? So by now, the wording of the question is already settled in his mind. So when he comes across the next answer, he's not going to read the question again. Naturally, he's simply going to come to the answer. And when he sees these kind of words, there is a sense of familiarity. There is a sense of subconscious mind saying, yes, this is right. Correct? This is what happens with us also. Correct? And which is why most of the toppers, I showed you Ishita's copy also, she is using the words which are given in the question. That tells the examiner, yes, she is answering that subpart. She knows the answer. It's a play on psychology. That's how, unfortunately or fortunately, AI is not yet checking the copies. Okay? So, make use of this. All right? So, this is regarding the different introductions that are there. Now, I will come to the main content or the body of the answer, which is the crux of this session, in which, in my opinion, is perhaps the most important key takeaway that you can have. I'll bust one more myth. I don't know the exact facts and data to write an answer. It is not required. I have proved it already. You don't. Yes, it will make your answer stand out. It will make you feel better when you write an answer. But at the same time, that does not stop you from writing an answer in the first place. All right? Now, nothing of importance can be built. Nothing of importance can be built and expected to last without having a strong foundation. If you want some things, now UPSC is a marathon. It's a long race. It's not a sprint. So if you want to last and succeed in this race, you have to have a strong foundation. And a strong foundation in this examination simply lies in the art of note making. How you are making your notes will completely translate into what your examiner sees in the answer copy, because you don't have time in the examination. And if you look at the date sheet, have you seen the date sheet? क्या date sheet थी इस साल के पेपर की? Is it there? It's not there. The first paper was on, the essay paper was on Friday, right? It was on Friday. And then 9 to 12. Next day morning, 9 to 12, again, is your general studies paper 1. So you write for 3 hours. 9 से 12 पे paper के लिए, you will at least wake up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. You will travel to the center. You will write the paper from 9 to 12. By the time you come out, it's already 12:30. है ना? By the time you come out, it's already 12:30. You barely have 1 hour, because 1:30 again you will start moving back. 2 बजे से तो आंसर लिखना शुरू करना है. So when you come out, you barely have 1 hour. In that 1 hour, you are already mentally exhausted because you have already written for 3 hours. You somehow have your lunch, take a break, maybe see some of the answers that you have written, or maybe flip the pages for the next paper. After that, you enter the examination hall again at 2 p.m. Again from 2 to 5, now you recollect all the polity, governance, IR, everything that you have studied in the last 2 years. You write those answers from 2 to 5, you come out, you're thoroughly exhausted, right? By the time you reach home, it's 7 p.m. By 8:30, you have to go to bed because you have to wake up again at 6:30 or 5:36 in the morning. Which means you have absolutely zero time for revision. At the most, you can just flip pages, nothing else. Okay? Then, once you go back, again next morning you wake up, you travel to the same center, there is no change. You travel to the same center, sometimes the same desk and everything remains the same. And you again write a paper from 9 to 12. Okay? From 9 to 12 you write the paper, again you come out by 12:30. You've already written for how many hours? 4. In the last 3 days you have already written 4 papers, essay, GS1, GS2, GS3. Okay, that makes it how much? 12 hours. 12 hours you have already written, okay? And then finally again you have to go back, remember all the case studies, all the ethics, integrity, aptitude, all those kind of keywords that you've prepared for. Again jot them down for 2 to 5, from 2 to 5, and then come out. By the time you are out of the ethics paper, I can tell you from experience, your hand is paining like hell. The fingers start cramping. It's just so bad. It's not easy. You can't write. Now, if अगर मैंने तुम्हें अभी एक exercise कराई है, If I had made you write even 4 answers back to back, you would have felt mentally exhausted. 4 answers, and here we are talking about 20 into 4 plus 1 essay. This is the real deal of this examination, which people usually fail to see. It's the timetable, it's the schedule of the exam, which tells us that everything has to be prepared beforehand, number 1. Number 2, everything has to be in your long-term memory rather than your short-term memory. Because short-term memory will be wiped out in that एक essay के paper के बाद ही सब गायब हो जाएगा जो तुमने shallow पढ़ा है. You will only remember what you have listened to the faculty members in the classes, because that would go in your long-term memory. What you have gradually comprehended, made notes of, खुद हाथ से लिख के जो तुमने किया है वही याद रहने वाला है. Okay? Which is why the art of note making and note making exercise itself is the single most important skill in this examination. Single most important skill. Okay, let's come to note making. Okay, before I start with note making, I'm going to club the note making under 2 heads. Okay, one is newspapers, and the other is your static portion. Okay, your normal textbook or whatever you read. Let's first start with the newspaper. So today morning itself, I read an article in the Indian Express which talked about Gandhi's khadi to Modi's no matter the color of investment, a new shade of Swadeshi. The question, read the article's heading carefully and tell me what does it say. It is drawing a comparison between what Gandhiji did with khadi during the freedom struggle. We talked about Swadeshi. And now what are we doing against the US tariffs? Atmanirbharta, vocal for local. Is there not a similarity between the two? In that era, the Britishers had put up a 60 to 70% fine, or sorry, import duty on the Indian cotton textiles in the British, so that they could be discouraged and British textiles would be encouraged. Similar thing is happening now. Tariffs, which are being levied by USA, 50%, correct? So, if you come across an article like this, what and how do you tell your brain that how is it important from UPSC preparation point of view? What would you do? Of course, you would read the article, you will skim through it, but पढ़ लिया उसके बाद क्या करोगे? Is my question. Very good. Okay. बस फिर हो गया. पहले हमने उसको सिलेबस पे मैच किया कि ये कहाँ आ सकता है, फिर हमने उसको PYQs देखे ऐसा कोई सिमिलर क्वेश्चन है कि नहीं, और फिर हमने थोड़ा करंट रेलेवेंस पढ़ा, और फिर डब्बा गोल हो गया. क्यों डब्बा गोल हो गया? क्योंकि हमने नोट्स नहीं बनाए, क्योंकि हमने उस टॉपिक को कंसोलिडेट नहीं किया. अब ये क्वेश्चन अगर तुम्हें नेक्स्ट ईयर मेंस में आ गया, यू विल से या पढ़ते हुए आंसर क्वेश्चन देखते हुए योर माइंड विल थिंक हाँ मैंने ये आर्टिकल पढ़ा था, अरे हाँ उसमें ये 2 पॉइंट लिखे थे, एंड तुम्हें बस वो 2 पॉइंट ही याद होंगे, एंड देन यू विल ट्राई टू फ्रेम एन आंसर आउट ऑफ दैट 2 पॉइंट्स. फिर एग्जाम में भी 2 पॉइंट्स ही मिलेंगे. ठीक है? चेंज योर स्ट्रक्चर, चेंज योर अप्रोच. यू आर लिविंग इन द एरा ऑफ AI. यूज इट. ठीक है? So when you read the whole article, what do? We pick up any data or statistics कि चलो let's say Britishers ने उतना impose किया था and अभी इतना हो रहा है. We draw an analogy, whatever data or some fact, something interesting, name of some commission, committee, any important value addition point that we get from an article, and then we leave it there. Just वो हमने mentally note किया. Then we go to an AI tool, anyone you want. ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, सब भाई हैं. Okay, whichever you want to pick. And then I ask ChatGPT, similarities between Atmanirbhar Bharat and Swadeshi movement. You have a ready answer in front of you. Economic self-reliance is point number 1, which is what both the things talk about. Nationalistic spirit, which is again what both the things talked about. Promotion of local industries, vocal for local, we are still talking about it. Gandhiji's khadi was there. Public mobilization, Modi ji wants to, still instill in people made in India, right? Then whatever was the underlying philosophy. How difficult is it? You people are living in a generation of AI, you have no problem. But the problem is the mehnat, right? The problem is in the hard work. I have seen this article, I have understood it. Let me go to ChatGPT and ask, okay, what are the different... And I'm saying this for people who really believe in shortcuts, which is okay. Okay, you are anyway bombarded with so many classes, so much material. Use AI. AI is not a shortcut, AI is a smart companion. All right, use AI. So you get those similarities. Wherever your notes are related to either, let's say, Atmanirbhar Bharat or Swadeshi, jahan pe bhi you think it fits best in your syllabus, as she said, you fit it. Just jot these points down. Even if you write just the headings and maybe 1 or 2 points, data tumne article se utha liya, points tumne yahan se utha liye, how difficult is it? Just draw a table. And then usi breadth mein ask ChatGPT, what are the differences between the two? Because if UPSC is going to ask you similarities, it is going to ask you differences also. And then you simply ask, so what is the difference? It says first is historical context. Wo kis context mein tha? This is that was more of a political resistance against British colonial power, right? This is more of a policy initiative for a sovereign state. Then nature of objective, then scope, then globalization, all right? Method of implementation, this relied mainly on mass movements, right? Bonfires, picketing. This is more of a policy reform. This is more of a general awareness among people. Then scale of participation. Do you really think you have an answer ready? It is so easy, but what is the difficult part is, ye search karna and then jot it down in a very safe place, not on loose sheets. I'm requesting you, don't make notes on loose sheets unless you are very good at taking care of them. If you are good at taking care of them, please proceed. But if you are not, mind my words, first, second attempt के बाद सब इधर उधर हो जाएगा कि कौन सा कहाँ है. If you can, great. Okay? So make sure you know where you have written it. So that if you are attempting any paper, mock test or anything, you can always go back to these notes and talk about it. And this is the kind of material you need for essay also. This is the kind of value addition material that builds perspective for essay also. Essay these days are all philosophical topics, which are very general and blanket in nature. So you can fit all these as examples. So now the challenge in this examination is not so much in structure, introduction, body, conclusion, everybody has done that. Now it is in perspectives. How you are bringing different perspectives in the examination, different dimensions in your answers, and validating that with data. Clear? So this is one. Number 2, that is for newspapers. So newspaper mein, till now, conventional method was, if people would read an article, they would start jotting down, अच्छा article में ये sentence लिखा है, I'm jotting down this, ये मैंने notes बना लिए आज के newspapers के. It is irrelevant. Don't waste your time doing so much. तुम 5 घंटे भी एक दिन के न्यूज़पेपर को लगा दोगे, you will still feel that I have not done enough. Finish the topics, link it with the syllabus, see if there are similar PYQs related to that, how they have been asked, and frame your notes accordingly. And frame your notes from a more, UPSC point of view, rather than newspaper point of view. You are not being asked to write a summary of the newspaper. Okay, please. Next is your static portion. Okay, how you make notes out of books. Take 2 minutes to read this page. This is a government website page on natural farming. Take 2 minutes to read this, and then we will make notes out of this. All right? Okay, done. By the way, the art of reading faster, skimming through articles and text is also a very handy skill when it comes to UPSC, because there is so much material that you should have the ability to quickly go through something and find out what's relevant and what's not. This is also a very important tool. Okay, so this is natural farming. What do I note down? I am going to underline what you want me to note down in my notes. Okay, tell me. It is a chemical-free farming system. Okay. Rooted in Indian tradition. Do you think we need this? मेरे पास इतना टाइम होगा एग्जाम में. It's not a very substantial point. ये छोड़ना है, ठीक है? ये जो कहानियाँ सी होती है ना, बहुत ही सेंटी इमोशनल, ये सब हम ऐसे के लिए रखेंगे. Will not keep this for GS. You will not have time. Rooted in Indian tradition will not give the answer that examiner will want. Okay, yes. Resource recycling, okay. And which has a resource recycling or diversified farming system. And if you are diversifying, so what you are doing, you're basically integrating crops, trees and livestock. बस तुम जितना कम लोग, it's better. Take out only the bare minimum. उतना bare minimum जो एग्जामिनर को बता दे कि तुमने नेचुरल फार्मिंग पढ़ा है. इससे ज़्यादा एग्जामिनर को इम्प्रेस करने का ज़रूरत नहीं है. नेचुरल फार्मिंग इज़ अ केमिकल फ्री फार्मिंग सिस्टम विच इंटीग्रेट्स क्रॉप्स, ट्रीज एंड लाइवस्टॉक्स. अब तुम्हें कोई भुला भी नहीं सकता ये. यू कैन नॉट फॉरगेट इट. It is so simple and basic. You will write this in one sentence in your notes. And when you are writing any answer, natural farming ka mention hai, you can talk about this. Just mention. This, the crisper and the shorter the notes are, the more marks you will get. The lengthier and bulkier your notes are, you will have a trouble time in exam. Okay, next. Biomass mulching. रखना है रख लो, नहीं भी रखोगे तो चलेगा. बायोमास मल्चिंग, ठीक है. देन सो नाउ अब हमने देख लिया, हमने एक डेफिनेशन आ गई हमारे पास, ठीक है. नाउ वी विल टॉक अबाउट द फीचर्स ऑफ नेचुरल फार्मिंग. सो इन योर हेड अगेन हैव अ स्ट्रक्चर, नॉट लाइक कि आई हैव दिस पैराग्राफ, आई एम ओनली पिकिंग अप कीवर्ड्स. हैव अ स्ट्रक्चर इन योर हेड. व्हाट इज नेचुरल फार्मिंग? व्हाट आर द फीचर्स ऑफ नेचुरल फार्मिंग? इज दिस. फीचर्स इन्वॉल्व, let's say on-farm biomass recycling or biomass mulching. Okay, this will be an example of that. Then it maintains soil erosion. There is no synthetic chemical input. It will reduce dependency on purchase inputs like fertilizers and pesticides. Okay, it is cost effective. It has a scope for increasing employment and rural development. Bas, khatam features. Naturally your brain should think that if it is so good, why is it not implemented in the whole of country? Then we come to the challenges. Then you search on the net challenges. अगर इसमें है तो ठीक है, नहीं है तो you search for challenges, but you finish that topic there and then. Don't wait for the teacher to come and teach you about natural farming, tell you the challenges and all. वो वही basic 4-5 points हैं which have been doing the round since decades. Okay, so you're not going to miss out on anything great. Just do a simple Google search or an AI search and jot down the points, what are the challenges related to adoption of natural farming in India. Again, here some more points are given. So it encourages biodiversity, builds healthy soil, discourage algal blooms. All these are points which are again advantages of. तो इसको एक ऐसे बनाया advantages and then ऐसे बना के अपने notes में लिख लिया. That's all. Alright, and niche you have written about the challenges. Then you can talk about the adoption in India, extent of adoption of natural farming in India. So we can talk about many states. What are the many states? So for example, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka are among the leading states. 5 के नाम नहीं याद करने, पहले 3 के कर लो. ठीक है? Do you understand? Prepare your answer when you are reading a topic. Don't read a topic for leisure. You are not reading a magazine. You are preparing. Now see, from तुम्हारे पास जितनी भी books हैं अभी UPSC के, जितना भी classroom notes material, whatever you have gathered till now, compare all that with the thin answer sheet that you will get. How can you summarize all of that into those few pages? You can only do when you pick up the relevant point and jot it down. It's as simple as that. All right, that's the difference between input and output. Now, this is regarding body, the body of the answer. You know, you have already discussed the different structures. Okay, structuring, you know. How to make notes will determine the level or the content that you have in your answers. How good or bad your content is will depend on how good your notes are. It's as simple as that. So brevity is a very important skill to have in UPSC. Short, clear, simpler sentences. Nobody is interested in your flowery language, long sentences, natural farming is this, that, or no. On farm, biomass recycling, integrates farming, खत्म बस. इससे ज़्यादा उस एग्जामिनर में दिमाग नहीं है कि वो बैठ के तुम्हारे लंबे लंबे sentences interpret करे. Okay, so understand that. Okay, so we move to the next part, which is the conclusions. How are the different conclusions written? We've already seen, we've talked about a way forward, how you can, make it more reformist or futuristic. You can say this is what we can do, or you can have a balanced conclusion. We had a balanced conclusion in one of the questions also. We discussed that. Then, or you can summarize, simply summarize the points. I'll show you examples. So summarized would be, so for example, this question is on the contribution of Ram Manohar Lohia. Now look, the toppers already mark the keywords in the question. Contribution of Ram Manohar Lohia in freedom struggle and in post-independence India. है ना, दोनों उसने mark कर लिया, what is the demand of the question. So finally, Ram Manohar Lohia was an important voice of social justice and inequality throughout his life. जब कुछ नहीं आता है तो ये जो general keywords होते हैं ना, and it's not that कि उसको आता नहीं है. It's sometimes in the examination, your mind is so overwhelmed with the information, you sometimes due to lack of time, you're not able to really think through. You just want to finish your answer and move on to the next. It's not about knowledge, it's about that pressure. I told you, UPSC, the complexity is in the pressure. Okay? All right. Major legacies of Indian freedom movement. Then, the freedom struggle was notable to ensure civil liberties, which is a basic constituent of human development and culminated in the Indian Constitution. Very simple. Okay? How liberties during the freedom struggle culminated into the Indian constitutions and the rights that we have today, fundamental rights. All right. Balanced conclusion. Balanced conclusion. So for example, this question talks about private PPP model, public-private partnership. The need of the hour is to retain welfareist approach. Okay. For A Sen's or Amartya Sen's capability development, yet augment private sector support to achieve sustainable development goals. Simple. Okay? So you are balancing the two. Again, similarly here in Quit India movement, some historians refer to it as August Revolution, and then you can talk about the signals it sent to the colonial mindset. Okay? So you can have any kind of balanced conclusion also, you can have a reformist conclusion. Reformist conclusion is something that the examiner will mostly expect in a question which is of such a topic. For example, the question on manual scavengers. You cannot have a balanced approach in this. You can't say that, oh yes, we need manual scavengers because of the lack of technology and infrastructure that we have in country. This is a question that will not require balanced approach. You need a reformist approach. So you have to talk about the betterment of these people. Okay. Similarly, environmentalism, again, you need a reformist approach because we are moving towards an era where climate change has to be integrated with all the policies that are being made. All right. So, थोड़ा topic को assess कर लो कि इसमें कोई scope है भी कि balance का नहीं. If there is no scope for balance, please have a reformist conclusion. Clear? And like we saw Ishita's copy, you can always give examples. You can talk about government schemes, right? You can talk about international conventions. You can talk about sustainable development goals, human rights declaration. You can talk about Indian human rights, the fundamental rights, DPSP, fundamental duties. These are all generic points which usually fit into an answer. Even for environment, you can have these points. All right, so have such generic points ready which you can fit in if if you're feeling a little lost. Because see, your conclusion is the final bang in the examiner's mind. He's happy with a good introduction. He's convinced with your structure, whatever you have written in the body of the answer. That final, जो एक होता है ना, closing ending scene movie का. If the movie ending scene is not convincing, the entire series goes for a toss. Example, Game of Thrones. Right? Most of the people were very unhappy because they felt that the ending was not very convincing. So the whole effort goes for a toss if your end is not, impressive. And that's what you have to make sure, that one final conclusion may, you're giving something additional to the examiner from what has already been written in the answer. Okay? Okay. Quick look at subject-wise. All right, subject-wise, we've discussed general topics, we've just discussed the general techniques. Subject-wise, let's take a quick look at the, UPSC demand. Okay, we'll start with art and culture. Now, art and culture, we have seen questions which range from, for example, they want to compare it to a region, why this sort of culture evolved in a particular region, all right? So you can have region-wise examples ready. So for instance, you saw Ishita's answer copy, where she has shown a map of India and she has discussed the different, musical traditions of different regions. So for every art form, एक map mind में keep ready. Puppetry हो गया, तो north में कौन सी है, south में कौन सी है, fine. For example, music, instruments, folk dance, classical dance, all these art forms, you can have one map ready for them, and which can be copy pasted in an answer pertaining to that kind of art form. Sculpture also, you can do the same. So have region wise examples ready. Significance in modern times, what is the importance of preserving our heritage? Okay, what is the importance of preserving our tangible and intangible heritage? That is also a frequently asked themes. Comparison with contemporary. How has sculpture evolved over the years? How has architecture evolved over the years? Right from ancient to medieval to modern times, how has architecture evolved and how has it shown the different dynasties that have ruled over India? So that is one theme. And then maps and diagrams always comes in handy. So let's take a look at some of the questions. So for example, this year, UPSC asked, the sculptors filled the Chandela art form with resilient vigor and breadth of life. So you are linking the art form with the dynasty, right? Which dynasty? And then you remember, so they are famous for, Chandela is famous for Khajuraho, okay? So then you talk about the different vibrant aspects of Khajuraho, what are depicted in Khajuraho. Fine. Similarly, you can talk about nature of Bhakti movement and contribution to Indian culture. Nature क्या था उसका? What was its contribution to Indian culture? Similarly, Indian philosophy and tradition have played a significant role in conceiving and shaping the monuments and their art in India. So the relationship between the monuments and the art forms and the social way of life. This is one of the most common recurring themes. How art forms show उस time का social life and how vice versa, social life impacted the art forms. So it's the relationship between the two. Okay. Similarly, Persian literary sources of medieval India reflect the spirit of the age. How will you explain that medieval Indian temple sculptures represent the social life of those days? This is a recurring theme in art and culture. Clear? Is this clear? So this is the, whenever you're reading about art forms, one, have a map ready, region-wise, where you can, whenever the map is ready, you can A, draw the map, you can use it to give examples wherever you want to fit in. B, have a timeline of how that art form has evolved over the years. Correct? And C, have examples, and then if there are some prominent examples, like let's say Tanjore temples or Khajuraho temples or Konark, then thoda sa about their features, what makes them stand out. Clear? Of course, and the link that they have with the dynasty or the patrons. Okay, that means the Rajas and Maharajas who encouraged that kind of art form. It's very important. Okay, There is an answer also related to it, but it's very similar to what we saw with Ishita's copy. So for example, there is a map, then what are the different, the different influences or impact of that kind of art and culture. Okay, next is ancient and medieval history. Similar kind of questions. Dynasties and their contribution. Okay, and rulers and their contribution also. So for example, why Khilji's administrative policies, correct? Akbar's secularism. This is one of the most common questions that we see, right? So this year also we have seen a question related to Akbar's religious syncretism, correct? Causes and impact of those policies. What are the causes? Why was Akbar having such, religious or secular, you can say, mindset? And then what was the impact of that, correct? So causes and impact of policies, personalities and their contribution, we've discussed, and geographical factors. For example, why were the 3 battles of Panipat? The 3rd battle of Panipat was fought in 1761. Why were so many empire-shaking battles fought at Panipat? Wahin kyun hui? Correct? So geographical location also becomes a very important point in history. Okay? So this year you have this main aspect of Akbar's religious syncretism. What are the major changes, technological changes that were introduced during the Sultanate period? Krishnadev Raya was an accomplished scholar himself, but was also a great patron of learning and literature. Okay? So these are the links that have to be established. Normally when we study history, the mistake that we do is we usually try to remember a timeline. ये वाली dynasty आई, फिर इसके बाद ये वाली आई, फिर इस period से ये आई, ये यहाँ थे, इनकी उनसे war हुई. We are stuck in this kind of information. Whereas the questions are these. Okay? Next is, so some of the introductions that you can have for these kind of questions, you can establish the link between the patron and the art form. You can talk about World Heritage Sites, if it is included in World Heritage Sites. So for example, recently Maratha hills, right, which were used for warfare, they have been included in the UNESCO list. Then you can give a reference of the time period. You can talk about how a great social reformer so-and-so person was. So for example, Phule, of course that's from modern India. But you can give a generic statement also. So see some of the introductions that toppers have given. Sanchi Stupa as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Okay. Similarly, Ram Leela and Mudiyettu were recently included in the UNESCO Intangible List. Okay. So Pala Empire with its founder and ruler Gopala were great admirers of Buddhism and patronized it, leading to the great artistic traditions. Establish the link between the patron and the art form. Okay. Similarly, यहाँ पे. Okay. Gopala ka, you give a time frame that he was in the 5th century AD. All these are acceptable introductions that can be given in the exam. Modern Indian history and post-independence. Again, chronology of events in the sense of causes and impact. What were the long-term and short-term causes of the first war of independence? Correct. What was its impact? Correct. You can talk about that. Personalities and their contribution. Phule, we had a question on Jyotiba Rao Phule this year. Then all groups and their leaders. So freedom struggle mein, not only are they going to ask you about Gandhi and extremists and moderates, they are going to ask you about the contribution of women, the contribution of foreigners in the Indian freedom struggle. So all the different groups that have been, traders, industrialists, you have to prepare from their point of view also. Okay? Nature of movements, whether they were violent or they were non-violent, etc. And authors and their work, of course, is something that you have to do for prelims as well. So let's see some questions. This is this year's questions. Mahatma Jyotirao Phule's writings and efforts of social reforms touched issues of almost all subaltern classes. Okay? So again, why did British India Army, which mostly comprised of Indian soldiers, they win consistently against the more numerous and better equipped Indian rulers. So there is a why and how and what did it do is something jo har historical event ko you have to see through the lens of why, how and what impact it had. All right? Okay. Again, some introductions you can see. So British were on a mission to loot colonies for their industrialization, simple. Then here again, Bhagat Singh pe question hai. The question is on Bhagat Singh, but the topper has mentioned after the decline of non-cooperation movement, post Chauri Chaura incident, revolutionary voices strengthened, and one of such loudest voices was Bhagat Singh. It's a beautiful introduction. That why Bhagat Singh came to limelight, or why was there a resurgence of such extremist people. Okay, so you can mention that also. Now, British Empire, again you can talk about the policies that British Empire employed, free trade, expansion of railways, misguided notion of welfare of India, so on and so forth. So these are things that you can include in your introduction. Society. This is one of everybody's favorite sections, because it's a little generic in nature. It's something that you see and feel and observe on a daily basis. But marks usi ko hi milenge who will write with relevant keywords and data. Okay, so for instance, if UPSC has asked a question on, do you think marriage as a sacrament is losing its value in modern India? You and I can debate on this topic for hours, right? So you can say, yes, marriage has become redundant. There are so many divorces, people are preferring live-in relationships, whatever. You can have huge, long list of topics. But you have to be crisp in your answers and mention the relevant keywords. Similarly, this year again, UPSC asked the globalization question that we just discussed. So do you think, okay, the questions are in such a nature, they ask about your personal opinion. So make sure that your answer reflects that you either think yes or no, or you can have a balanced point of view regarding both. Okay. How is the growth of tier 2 cities related to the rise of a new middle class with an emphasis on the culture of consumption? Again, consumerism and consumption. Okay, so these are frequently seen topics in the examination. Okay, you can also talk about this regionalism, right? So look at this, COVID wala. Again, it talks about COVID accelerated class inequalities and poverty in India. It led to the rich becoming richer and poor becoming poorer. Discuss. Okay, so society, these kind of questions. Moving forward, geography. Geography again is a subject which can be, it's usually technical in nature and it's concept static in nature. So you either know the concept or you don't know the concept. So which is why, but you can safely answer questions after attending your classes and reading your NCERT textbooks. This is more than sufficient knowledge that you require for this exam. But to score well in geography, you have to have a map or a diagram. Any geography answer is incomplete without a map or a diagram. Okay, it has to be there. So concepts of physical geography, you should know. If I ask you what is a twister, what is a tornado, what is a tsunami, you should be able to tell me in one line. In 2-3 lines, what are the reasons for their development? Why do they occur? Then any recent example that you remember, then what is the impact that they have, and related to climate change or any other dimension that that topic might have. Understood? So the notes have to be prepared in such a manner कि पूछ लो जो पूछना है. Okay, it has to be like that. No matter what the examiner asks, you can always write something. Okay? All right. So geography questions. So for example, this year the question was, discuss the distribution and density of population in the Ganga River basin with special reference to land, soil and water resources. It's a very difficult question if you look at it. Okay, but again you have to break it down. But what does it tell you? It's giving you an indicator for the future questions, that this is how you have to prepare. Similarly, give a geographical explanation of the distribution of offshore oil reserves. How are they different from onshore? Very difficult question again. Okay, difficult. Of course, you might have some examples, Bombay High and all in mind, but how are they different? The nature of rocks, everything changes. Okay, so geography is one tough nut to crack if there are tough questions. They can frame very tough questions. They can frame simple questions also, like, okay, troposphere is a very significant atmospheric layer that determines weather processes. Everybody knows that troposphere from 8 to 18 kilometers, right, is the average height. And then it is where all the weather phenomena is concentrated. So you can talk about clouds, you can talk about all sorts of weather related phenomena. Clear? Okay. Introductions in geography, you can give examples. You can talk about data. So for example, pharmaceutical industry, you can talk about the value. You can talk about the definition, what are volcanoes, how are they formed. La Nina, again, what is La Nina? What is its impact on India monsoons? Again, data-based, 75% of India's coastline is prone to cyclones. This is one of the most common introductions in disaster management questions, that how vulnerable are we to that disaster. All right, and in this also always remember there are two perspectives, one is national and one is international. Okay, so make sure you're noting down the data correctly. Polity and governance, again, you know the nature of questions. What really needs your answer to make it stand out is you have to include all the dimensions of the law, whether it is a constitutional provision that is being talked about or a constitutional post, whether it is statutory, what is its linked with fundamental rights, with DPSP, fundamental duties, that will make your answer stand out. Includes case studies and examples. You have to include Supreme Court judgments, Vishakha guidelines, okay? Any important judgments which are pertinent to that answer, the examiner will look for that in your answer, okay? And it is something that you will very easily come across in your general course of preparation. And finally, you can prepare on international law. You can talk about human rights. You can talk about International Court of Justice. So for example, recently International Court of Justice has talked about environmental rights, right? So all that can be mentioned under this. So important, you can link it with international law also. Okay. Again, there are some examples, but I'm not going through the examples. The PPT will be made accessible to you. You can download it and just read the answers. Yeah, this one answer I wanted to show. So this is again a question on public-private partnership. Okay, and look the way the topper has represented the answer. This is public sector, this is private sector, and he has, rather than, you know, pura usko samjhane ki bajaye, because the question is saying has the potential to bridge the gap in India's healthcare system. So he is focused on the core of the question, that it works on the healthcare system. But to explain PPP, he has not taken much space, just drawn one diagram. Public sector brings fund, land, enabling environment, bureaucracy.
UPSC success begins with self-awareness. And that's exactly where most aspirants struggle. You may be studying hard, but do you really know your weak areas? Because in the exam hall, UPSC won't spare mistakes. That's why Vision IAS brings you the All India GS Prelims test series. Think of it as a mirror. It doesn't just give you marks, it gives you the real picture of your preparation. With Sandhan, you get access to 25,000 plus practice questions to sharpen your skills. Receive detailed feedback and analysis so you don't repeat mistakes. Create on-demand tests to focus on your weak areas. Build speed, accuracy, and confidence by experiencing the real exam environment. And track your progress with clear, data-driven insights every step of the way. So don't just prepare blindly. Prepare smart. Turn your weaknesses into strengths with AITS Sandhan, starting from 7th September. Visit our website or call us today to know more.
Okay, and then private sector brings in technology, professionalism, engineering, advancement, skill set. This is a very simple way of representing all the information that you know. You can write this whole thing in 3 pages and you can represent it like this also. This is fairly acceptable in UPSC because everybody knows that you are short on time, and with a small infographic or a flow chart like this, the examiner can see through that you are prepared with keywords. Unko pata hai ki tumko pata hai. ठीक है? So this is regarding representation. Similar thing with international relations. You need to know the evolution of India's foreign policy, our relations with first neighborhood, then the region, and then maybe other countries, like for example USA and other distant countries. You need to know the different policies, theories, okay, Act East Asia policy, all those kind of policies that are there. Then draw maps. Maps really helps. And if there are some views of any diplomats or heads of state. So for example, let's say there is a bilateral meeting between two foreign affairs, like Indian foreign affairs minister and the other one, and they gave a sweeping statement regarding the relationship that we are entering an era of bilateral cooperation and something like that they mentioned. So you can always mention that in your conclusion or your introduction. That gives a good impact on the examiner that you have read the news per se. Maps, look at this answer again. Timeline, this is rank 6 Srishti Dabas's answer. So here, for example, she has mentioned Indo-China relations mein, the war in 1962, Doklam crisis in 18, Galwan crisis in 20 and Tawang crisis in 22. It's not very difficult to do this because 1962 ke baad recent wale hi sare mentioned hai. You can do that too, right? In a simpler way, you can show to the examiner that India and there has been a long history of border skirmishes between the two countries. And in the map section, she has again shown western section, middle sector and eastern sector. And then she has shown western sector has the Johnson and McDonald line. Okay, middle sector is relatively stable, and then there is the eastern sector which has the McMahon line. It's a very simple concept, jo already most of you would already know, but it has been represented in a very nice manner. Okay, so please, when you are ending this class, go home with the faith that you have enough content. Okay, go home with the faith. What you have to learn is how to bring it from here to here. Okay, that flow, and that can only come with practice. Economics, again, you have to see the previous year's questions, economics indicators, survey related points. If you mention that it was mentioned in the survey, it adds a lot of value to your answers. Graphs and charts, trends can be shown in the answers to make them more vivid, and socio-economic aspects of economic policies, that makes it all the more interesting. Okay, environment and disaster management, again, you know the disaster management cycle, the different NDMA guidelines with respect to each disaster, urban flooding ka kya hai, landslides ka kya hai. First and foremost, how much prone are we to that? How vulnerable are we in terms of, let's say, people, revenue, anything you can write. Percentage of area, you can write that also. And then what are the different guidelines? What are the different structural and non-structural measures that can be taken? Structural means buildings, retrofitting of buildings. Non-structural means people awareness, behavioral change, okay, communication. So all that can be part of that. Next is, for people who already know the basics of art making and all this, what you need to work on is data dimensions and diversify your answers. Because basics, whatever you know, will be known by almost everybody. What you generally observe, people will also be able to write that in the exam. What will make you stand out is data, different dimensions that you cover, and the diversify and more points, value-added points in your answer. Note making, please, my earnest request is use AI smartly and make good notes. Okay? I'll tell you the process to do that also. Okay? PYQs and peer groups. Please use your PYQs thoroughly and use your peer groups and your friends for more interactive such sessions where you can gain more out of it. Don't waste too much time debating issues. तुम्हें आज तक पे बैठने का, you are not going to get anything. ना तुम्हें वहाँ कोई पे, nobody is going to give you the footage to sit there and bang the tables, and it's just absolutely futile, which people usually do in the course of this preparation. कोई फायदा नहीं है. You're not getting anywhere. Please have a very, very limited input and maximum output. Limited input, conserve your energy on a daily basis. जितना पढ़ाया जा रहा है उसको अच्छे से पढ़ो, जितना concise उसको कर सकते हो करो, and revise it. All right. Use of artificial intelligence. Yes, AI is not a shortcut, it is a smart companion. You have to integrate it in your preparation because people are doing it now. And I am not saying that their answers will be better. All I'm saying is their effort is reduced. They will have more time to better their answers. Well, you might end up just struggling for the basics. Don't make that mistake. Okay, fine tune your strategy. You can use AI to make timetables for yourself. Tell AI, okay, make a timetable for me. Leave 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. in the morning and 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. in the evening when I have my class. Leave 1 hour in between for my lunch and recreation. And for the rest of the day, create a timetable for me in which I will, let's say, finish 1 chapter of this or whatever. Even if you don't want to mention chapter, just say this thing and give me a measurable output. AI is like talking to a human being. It is intelligent. So use that intelligence. Tell it, give me a measurable outcome. फिर वो outcome भी देगा. Then you tell it, okay, वो खुद ही पूछ लेगा. Do you want a printable PDF for this? You know, something that you can tick your progress against. Say yes. Get that printable. कई बारी तो बहुत ही गंदा भी बनाता है. I have to agree. But get it, okay? ठीक है, थोड़ा सा fine tune खुद कर लो. And get it printed. Hardly takes anything. Blinkit पे भेज दो. Get it. I'm advertising for so many companies here, but just get it printed and put it on there. And then, okay, today I had decided I will do this much, whether I have done it or not. And use AI for scheduling your preparation also. That's what I mean to say. Okay, you can do it. It's not bad. The problem is not in you having a good timetable. You have access to good timetables. The problem is in following it. Okay. Okay, upload your answers and get them evaluated. This is the most fabulous, output you can have from AI. Write a shabbiest answer. कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. It's just AI. You're not being judged. Nobody cares. You're not getting marks. If you want, AI can give you marks also. But just tell AI that this is what I'm uploading my answer, and tell me some more dimensions that I could have included in my answer. वहीं के वहीं तुम्हारा topic fine tune हो गया. Okay, and use it for brainstorming in different varied perspectives, like we did with that exercise. What are the similarities? What are the differences? Use AI to your advantage. But having said that, I will say it in the same breath. Having said that, trust your brain more than AI. Okay, trust your brain more than AI means सब कुछ AI करके दे रहा है, ठीक है? And you are not even applying your mind to it. You are mindlessly jotting down the points from your screen to your notes or from one page to another. Makes no sense. The real deal is in memorization, how much you are able to retain. And retention will be better if you do the hard work yourself, if you read the notes thoroughly, if you listen to your teachers properly. Okay, that is what, because it's at the end of the day, it's long-term memory. So trust your brain better. If you think there is a dimension which AI also could not think of, or it's not making sense, or you read it in a newspaper article, feel free to include it and exclude what you think is irrelevant. Okay, so your brain is still, we are still ahead of AI. Okay, abhi hame overtake nahi kiya AI ne. And also because the people who are checking your answer copies are still very old school. Don't forget that. The professors, the educators who are checking your answer copies are those जो वही किताबें पढ़ के आए हैं. Clear? तो उनको अभी AI का उतना exposure नहीं है. Plus, your answer has to stand out from rest of the crowd also. अगर सबने ही same चीज़ लिख दी, what's the point? ठीक है? So the old school people who are checking your answer copies will look for those conventional keywords: effectivity, efficiency. Okay, outcome, output, they will look for these kind of keywords in your answer. उनको देख के समझ आ जाएगा कि ये AI वाला आंसर है, वो नहीं करना है, ठीक है? So use AI but with a little bit of smartness, and there is no substitute for conceptual clarity, because AI is good at giving you a one-dimensional answer, but linking it with multiple dimensions is something that AI cannot do for you. Also, if you see this year's papers, the silos have been broken. The barriers have blurred. The lines have been blurred. There is no difference. Paper 1, 2, 3, सब कुछ भी हो रहा है. And it gets very difficult to write a question on, let's say, civil services in paper 1, जिसका कोई दूर दूर तक link नहीं है, ठीक है? So please make sure conceptual clarity is something that you have in your mind. You are merely using AI to get different dimensions and some good keywords. That's the only use that it has. Okay, and time management. Time management has to be done, 1, on a daily basis, 2, on an annual basis. We are right now in the month of September. Today is 1st September. You all are planning, most of you are planning to appear next year, so that's hardly like maybe 10 months away. Okay. In 10 months, you have to finish 13, 14 subjects, if I break down AMC also. And which means हर book में कम से कम 1-2 किताबें तो है जो ख़त्म करनी है, even if it is NCERT. That means you have to finish. So leave the last 3-4 months for revision. That means you barely have, let's say, 5-6 months. On those 5-6 months, you have to finish 13-14 subjects, which means you hardly have 2 to 3 subjects per month to finish. That means 2 to 3 books to finish. That means हर book में अगर 100 पेज भी हैं तो 300 पेज एक महीने में ख़त्म करना है. That means दिन के तुम्हें कम से कम 10-15 पेज पढ़ने ही पढ़ने हैं. You cannot say कि अच्छा ये मैं कल पढ़ लूँगा. That because it's not just पढ़ना, notes बनाना, current affairs करना, class attend करना. There is just so much that is happening during the day. But you have to have an annual plan that next year, February onward is only for revision. January tak I will be covering these subjects, and in so and so subject I will be covering XYZ book. And बस वो book फिर पढ़ना start कर दो. Use AI to get a timetable for you. Even if you don't want AI, I think you're smart enough to make that timetable for yourself. Okay, all right. And finally, yes, examination में time management. Those 3 hours. That will come with the more answer writing you do, the practice, more practice you do. So as they say, the more you bleed in practice, the more you sweat in practice, the less you bleed in war. All right? Okay. The final thing that I want you to take away from this entire session, one thing, और कुछ लेके जाओ ना जाओ, I want you to take this process with you. And I want you to take this simply on a strategy point of view. Any subject that you are picking, okay, whatever you are studying, first decode the syllabus with the help of PYQs. Okay, don't start with the book. Book छोड़ दो. First open the syllabus. Okay, for example, let's start with disaster management. Disaster management, I know, okay, I have to talk about what are the different phases of disaster management. I have to talk about the different types of disasters. I have to talk about the extent of each disaster, etc., etc. Then I have to talk about the NDMA guidelines, impact, and then some international treaties like Yokohama, Sendai, etc. This I know is the framework of disaster management. Broadly ki ye rahega. So I will, wherever, because in the syllabus there is just one line written about disaster management. ठीक है? So you have to make a table or a chart out of it कि disaster management के ये सारे aspects हैं, so that your notes can be prepared accordingly. Okay, before you start reading and mugging up books, do this activity, and then see the previous year's papers of disaster management. कि अच्छा क्या क्या question आए थे, तो is that being covered in my notes or not? Okay, do that. Then you start making notes. Now I will write a definition of disaster management. मैंने लिखा, एक register बनाया disaster management का, उसमें मैंने cycle भी बनाई, ऐसा diagram choose किया which I can replicate in the exam. I will not write anything in my notebook which I cannot write in the exam very clearly. Then I will write all the value addition points. Okay, basic points. Use AI, Google, whatever you want. Finally, and then as you go along the course of your preparation, कभी कोई newspaper में अच्छा article आया, or you come across a good article in your current affairs magazine, or you come across a good question in your test series, okay, anything, use that to enhance what is written in your notes, because that aspect was missing. Keep doing that and keep practicing answer writing. Okay, so you write answers, you evaluate them, and you repeat that exercise. These two stages will go hand in hand. This is more of a one-time effort. Okay, if you follow this process, no one can stop you from clearing this examination. If you do it with utmost sincerity, no one can stop you. Follow this approach, please, because everybody is taking classes. Everybody has joined coaching. Everyone is understanding concepts. But people are not able to put what they have here on paper. This is the gap that you have to fill. And this will only come when there is brevity in your notes, when your notes are crisp, concise, easy to remember. All right, so that activity has to be done by you. And finally, some presentation skills. You can show some of the data, timelines, relationships, etc. like this in the examination. Okay, so for example, the different summits of climate agreements, you have Kyoto Protocol, then came Paris Agreement. Okay, then you can also show different aspects. So for example, there are the different social, economic, political aspects. You can talk about that. So this is factors affecting mental well-being. What are the different factors? This is again from a topper's answer copy. You can mention it like this. You can mention in a map format also. So you remember the locust attack map that we saw? Very simple map. The Doklam, the China map also you saw. This also La Nina. These maps are nowhere close to perfect. Look at this map. This is South America, this is India, this is Southeast Asia. Look at the Australia, look at Africa. They are so basic and crude. ठीक है? But that should not deter you from drawing a map. I'm not saying draw like this. All I'm saying is, even if you're not perfect, it's all right. It's acceptable. Point is, it should be clearly visible what you're trying to show. So figure showing La Nina conditions. There is high pressure here and there is low pressure here. Okay, so that point should be conveyed properly. Okay, comparisons between relationships, so adaptation, mitigation, anything ऐसा बना सकते हो, plus minus का बना सकते हो, positives, negatives किसी चीज़ के लिखने हैं, you can draw it like this also. These are just other tools of presentation. Whatever is comfortable to you, you can do that. And finally, your pyramid relationship, one thing leads to another. You can mention also in such a format. Okay, what the examiner does not expect from you. The examiner does not expect calligraphy. Don't worry about handwriting. As long as it's legible, it's completely acceptable. Long verbose sentence. बिल्कुल bore मत करना. तुम जितना examiner को bore करोगे, उतना तुमको दोबारा लिखवाएगा paper. ठीक है? So please don't bore the examiner. Crisp, short sentences. To the point. ये है, ये है. The tone of your answer is dun 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 हो गया. Next dun 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 dun. ऐसा लगा उसके दिमाग में आना चाहिए. हाँ ठीक है, ठीक है, ठीक है, ठीक है. That should be the word in his subconscious mind. ये नहीं कि oh this that इतना वो editorial type क्या है? ठीक है? Nobody has a time for this. Nobody is interested. All right. Perfect maps and sketches. Too much elaboration not required. This is one mistake that everybody does. मैं हार्वेस्ट फेस्टिवल समझा दूँ उसे क्या है. अरे उसे पता चल गया एक सेंटेंस में हार्वेस्ट फेस्टिवल क्या है. तुमने 2 एग्जाम्पल भी दे दिए, हो गया उसका. मुझे पूरा ऐसा एक्सप्लेन करने का ज़रूरत नहीं है. उसको एक्सप्लेन ही करना है तो उसके सिग्निफिकेंस में कर दो. अच्छा ये पॉइंट है, ये पॉइंट है. यू डोंट हैव टू मेक स्टोरीज आउट ऑफ इट. ठीक है? सो दिस इज़ वॉट द एग्जामिनर डज नॉट expect. And enjoy your preparation. Most important thing, how you enjoy your preparation. Stick to standard sources. 1 या 2 बुक्स पकड़ लो हर सब्जेक्ट की, उसके आगे डोंट केयर. डोंट केयर. कुछ बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होगा अपने आप तुम्हें मिल जाएगा मॉक आंसर्स के थ्रू, टेस्ट सीरीज के थ्रू. ओके, टेस्ट्स आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. स्लो एंड स्टडी विन्स द रेस. देयर इज नो हरी. मेक अ टाइम टेबल, स्टिक टू इट. इफ यू आर अचीविंग even 70-80% of your daily target, it's okay. Move on to the next day's target. फिर अगले दिन ना पुराना catch-up grace में मत लग जाओ, because then you will lose motivation. Don't do that. Self-assessment. I cannot emphasize enough the value of writing prelims, MCQ-based tests. Very, very important. वो नहीं तो कुछ नहीं, because you will never get to write mains, and then of course the mains also. Okay, and take it easy, relax, enjoy, be sincere. It's nothing very difficult, frankly. In the end, the person who wins is the person who thinks he or she can. So your self-faith, your belief, your hard work will shine through, but the engine of that fire will come from why you are here for preparation. If your why is very strong, nobody can stop you. Okay? On that note, we are concluding this session. I hope it was informative, relevant, and you will take the key points forward. Thank you.